What's a big fear, maybe even a huge fear for nearly every mama during birth and maybe also every dad during birth? That's right, tearing. But here at Your Birth God's Way, we're all about operating in a place that's free of fear. So today we're going to talk about ways that you can reduce the chance that you tear during birth. And if you're like, tear what? What's that? Hang in there, I'll explain. Let's go. Are you a Christian woman yearning for a beautiful, joyful pregnancy and birth with a focus on God, not medical tests? Are you worried the birth you want isn't possible and you're tired of being treated like an accident waiting to happen? Hey mama, I'm Lori, host of Your Birth God's Way. I'm a certified nurse-midwife now, but I wasn't always. After working for nearly 20 years in the broken maternity system, I too was in your shoes wondering how I could have the birth I wanted and that I felt God meant for me to have. I found a secret that has actually been known since the beginning of time. God's way is the best way. Spoiler alert, God made us and our babies, and He knows us best. He designed us perfectly for pregnancy, birth, and nourishing our babies after birth, if we work with His design and not against it. In this podcast, you'll learn how to be healthy and have joy during this time of life that will be over before you know it. So if you're ready to reclaim your birth and your babies for His glory, go turn on a few episodes of Bluey for that little one on your hip so you can put the focus back on you for a few minutes with me. It's review time, and today I want to thank Mrs. S.J. Bate for leaving me a review back in April. The headline says, "Thankful for your knowledge." So thankful for all your research and for sharing it for all to hear and learn. And Mrs. S.J. Bate, I'm thankful for you for taking the time to leave me that review. It encourages me. It helps me to know that I'm actually helping people out there. And it also helps other mamas just like you find the podcast. So thank you for taking the time to do that. And if you are one of the people who has not done this, which I know a lot of you have, but I also know there's a lot that haven't. And I know a lot of you are probably thinking, it's just one review. It doesn't really matter. Oh, but it does. It makes a big difference. So please hit pause. Go take 30 seconds to leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. It will help me so much. If you don't have an Apple product and don't have access to an Apple product, even an email, any way that you can send some encouragement to me, it helps me so much. And I might start sharing some of those emails as reviews as well. So, and also I've gotten some messages on the Facebook group and different places like that. So Apple Podcasts helps the most as far as helping me reach new people, but all of your messages help encourage me. So don't discount that. Don't think it doesn't matter. It does. Okay, on to our topic for today, how to reduce your risk for tearing during birth. You know, it is only natural to think about it because if you look down there, you're thinking, wow, that's pretty small compared to the size of a baby, right? You look at a baby's head and you're thinking, wow, that looks big, right? And you can't help but think, how's it going to fit? That's just normal. And yet God made this design to work perfectly, just like all the rest of the design. And that small area will stretch to allow an entire human being to pass through it. And guess what? If you work with His design, it actually very rarely tears. And if it does, it's usually small and it usually heals on its own. And just for clarification, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, there is a term called perineal tear, perineal laceration. And that term just basically means that the skin between the vagina and the rectum or the anus can tear during birth. Sometimes the tears are other places, but that's most often the area that tears, just simply because that's the area that takes a whole lot of force. So let's kind of dig into some basic information first, okay? I want you to understand the issue, and then we're going to talk about some ways to prevent the issue. So first, before you go getting terrified, I need you to understand that most moms don't even feel if they tear. There is such an intense pressure down there when your baby is crowning. That means when the baby's head is starting to come through the opening of your vagina. It's so intense that even if you do tear, you probably won't perceive it. You're just going to perceive that pressure and that intensity, and it kind of all just goes together. I tore a little bit with my first. I'm not sure if it was a first or a second degree, and I'm going to talk about what those mean in a minute. But I didn't know it. until after when my midwife told me. She did repair it, but it was very minor. It wasn't a big deal. And it wasn't convenient, but it wasn't a huge deal. And like I said, I didn't feel it happen. So I don't want you to be so scared to deliver. I don't want you to be so scared to push and let your baby out that you clamp down afraid of that tearing. You probably won't feel it. And if you do, it's going to be so much a part of all the rest of the things that are going on down there that it's not going to be that big of a deal, most likely. I can't promise it, but out of all of the births that I've been a part of, I can't even remember if I've had anybody tell me that they felt it. I know I've heard stories of moms that do, but I can't remember if it was any of the ones that I've taken care of. So just keep that in mind to kind of bring that fear down a little bit. Second, let's talk about how you measure the tears, basically. I made reference just a minute ago to first and second degree. The tearing of the perineum is measured in degrees. First degree is just the skin. Very often, this is all you'll have. It's just like little superficial tears. Just think of like little cuts or abrasions like you would get, if you fell and scraped your knee or something like that. Not a big deal. Usually they don't even need to be repaired. Second degree has that skin, but it also starts to involve some muscle and a little bit more tissue. It still often doesn't have to be repaired. It just kind of depends on where it is and what's going on with it. You just, as a midwife or a doctor, you have to evaluate it and just decide if it's going to stop bleeding on its own. Because really the whole goal of repair is what's called hemostasis. That's basically making the bleeding stop. You want it to come together and to be stable enough to where it's not just bleeding out to contribute even more to blood loss that naturally comes after you have a baby. Like I said, very often doesn't need repair. Occasionally it will, but it's not going to be an intensive repair. Third degree starts to get a little bit more serious. It gets to the level of your rectum and your anus, which is where you poop out of. The muscle can start to be involved superficially. It is not a tear that goes all the way through, though. The tears that go all the way through are fourth degree tears, and those are a big deal. They are something that has to be repaired, usually in an OR by an obstetrician, but I don't want you to be afraid of that. I think I may have seen one in my career, either as a nurse or as a midwife, and I've only seen a handful of third degrees. So I don't want you to think that these happen all the time. We're going to talk in a minute about ways that you can try to make sure that you don't have one of these. I don't want you to be afraid of this. I just want you to be aware of the different degrees and what it all means. If you did have a fourth degree tear and if you did have to go to the OR to have it repaired, it would be numbed up. This is not something that you're going to feel or have to deal with in that way. It can have long-term consequences that you're going to have to deal with, but we won't go into that here. I don't want you to be terrified about this, okay? This is not something that I want you to lose any sleep over at all. Almost every tear that I have seen as a midwife or as a nurse has been either a first or a second degree with a quick repair. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Again, oftentimes the repairs aren't even needed because you got to think about, in order to repair, you have to inject a numbing solution, usually lidocaine. So that's a needle prick. Then each time the needle goes in to sew, that's another prick. So each one of these pokes is trauma. And so it's kind of a balance of, well, is it worth all this extra trauma to cause extra swelling and extra pain? Or is this tissue going to heal itself? And I'll tell you kind of a funny little phrase that I was taught in my midwifery training. And it's a little crude, so you'll have to forgive me a little bit, but I just want you to understand the concept here. And what I was taught was, if you put two pieces of the vagina in the same room, they'll find each other. And while that doesn't completely hold true, are cases where things haven't healed up properly when the tear was too bad to leave alone. Usually these first and second degree tears, the tissue is going to touch itself, it's going to heal itself, everything's going to be fine, and it's nothing to worry about. Usually only thirds or fourth degrees really need a lot of attention. And like I said, the fourth degrees are usually in the OR. So now that we've got the definitions behind us, we kind of understand what we're working with here. We are not operating from a place of fear. Promise me, Mama, you're not getting scared right now, okay? Work with me here. Do not get scared. Again, this doesn't happen to everybody, and we're going to make sure that you do everything you can do to keep it from happening to you. So the first thing that I will recommend that you do to reduce your risk of tearing is not going to surprise you at all, not even a little bit, and that is nutrition, nutrition, nutrition. That is a huge focus of this whole podcast, my courses, everything that I teach all comes back to nutrition. And why is that? Well, because the health of your tissues is the biggest thing you can control with your nutrition. We talk about this all the time. It goes beyond, though, the building blocks of just your baby. So you need to be eating a lot of protein in your diet anyway. You need to have a protein-rich environment that comes from good sources, whole foods, that your body knows what to do with, that you know where it came from. That's the best way to get this protein into your diet. That is the building blocks of your baby, but it is also the building block of you, the building blocks of you. Your body uses proteins to put everything together, to make new cells, to do all of the things that it needs to do. So when you are eating a high protein diet that has lots of good quality proteins in it, your tissues can be healthy and strong. They're going to be more pliable. They're going to be more able to take the pressure and the force and the stretch that's going to come from that baby's head when it's time for that baby to be born. Much more so than if you're eating Doritos and Cheetos and fast food and Mountain Dew and all the things that have no nutrition and really take from your nutrition status, okay? It only makes sense. You are what you eat. You've been knowing that since you were a kid and somebody said it to you, right? You literally are what you eat. Your body cannot create something that you don't give it. It uses from what you give it to get the building blocks that it needs to make the things it needs to make. So give your body good quality food, lots of protein, lots of hydration, good sleep, all of the things that you know build up a good, healthy, strong body. These are going to be the things that build up good, healthy, strong tissues as well. It's going to give your tissues the ability to stretch and be pliable, and that's what you want in that area. You want good, healthy tissue. So that's thing one. And I will say that as a practitioner, I could see a difference in the way a mom who was healthy and truly paying attention to her nutrition status, the way her perineum handled birth, and the ones who were not healthy. Either they were overweight, or maybe they weren't overweight, maybe they were underweight, but they were malnourished. You can tell a difference. It doesn't handle the same. The tissue is much more likely to tear and not hold together in a person whose tissues are not healthy. So that's thing one. Thing two, slow, controlled delivery. So this is one that's a little bit hard because it's not completely doable all the time. But if you are able, if you can try very gentle pushing when you're crowning, it will really give that skin time to stretch. Now, I know for you mamas who have had a baby already, you're probably laughing right now like, ha, 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 yeah, right, as if I could have gone against the pushing instinct that I have or had. I get that. That's why I said you can't always do this. That instinct to push is so strong that sometimes you just can't do anything about it. Your body is going to push whether you want it to or not. That's fine. But if you are able to slow it down by doing things like maybe holding your hand against the baby's head as it delivers. That doesn't mean to push back against it. You don't want to put counter pressure, but just to help it ease out instead of flying out, that will reduce your risk of tearing. If you can push a little bit, just gentle pushes between contractions. And I know, again, that goes against instincts. And I know that there's a lot of people that might say that's bad advice. I'm not saying do hard pushing to really wear yourself out between contractions. I'm saying if you can just give gentle pushes as you're breathing in between contractions, you can try to slowly keep that pressure down there to slowly stretch out those tissues. Have you been looking for a course online to help you prepare for your natural birth, but you're sick of having to weed through the content to take out all that new agey stuff or the flat out ungodly advice? Well, I've got some great news for you. There is now a course that will teach you everything you need to know to be fully prepared for birth, postpartum, and breastfeeding from a Christian perspective on demand, taught by a midwife with over 20 years of experience in the maternity world. And that midwife is me. After many years of being indoctrinated into that godless, medicalized maternity world, I woke up to the truth and realized that most of the maternity system in our country is based on lies. I became a doula, and then a midwife, and now I help moms like you have a God-led, God-filled birth from an informed position so that you do not have to be led by fear, but rather by faith in God and knowledge of the truth. Inside this course, you will be engulfed in Scripture while learning about God's ways of nutrition, prenatal care, birth, postpartum care, breastfeeding, what dad needs to know, and so much more. In addition to the course content itself, which is available in both video and audio formats, you'll get workbooks for each module so you can take notes on what you want to remember, Christian relaxation audio tracks to use during pregnancy and labor, printable affirmation cards, and the best part, you'll get access to a live question and answer session with me each month to ask your questions. To sign up or learn more, head over to go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course. That's go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course. Now, this is a serious course, and it's only for serious mamas who truly want to have their birth God's way. So if that's you, head over to go.yourbirthgodsway.com/course today, and I'll see you in the course. You can also blow through the contractions. Another thing that I know is next to impossible to do. I get it, but some people have so much control that they can do this. And what I'm trying to say is, when you're having these contractions, your uterus is trying to push your baby out. Then when you add your own pushing to it, your own bearing down efforts, that adds even more pushing effort. That's normal. There's nothing wrong with that. However, if you want to have a slow, controlled delivery, if you can fight that urge to bear down super hard and just blow through it, just really be blowing and breathing through those contractions and letting your body be the only thing that's doing the pushing, not you adding the extra force, that can also give that skin more time to stretch as the baby's head slowly moves through rather than flying out. You can imagine, think about anything that you've ever tried to stretch slowly. If maybe you're playing with your kid's Play-Doh or silly putty or anything like that stretches. If you pull hard and fast, it'll rip. If you pull slow and steady, you very often can stretch it a lot further. It's that same concept. So the slower you can deliver the baby's head, the less likely you are to tear. Now, again, none of these are guarantees. Some people are going to tear anyway. So don't take it as I'm saying, if you do this, you won't tear. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to give you as many tools in your toolbox as I can to give you the best chance to not tear. Next thing, no episiotomies. So episiotomy is a surgical cut to that perineal tissue. So basically, it's an instant laceration. It's an instant tear. But some providers, especially obstetricians, tend to believe that will increase the area of the vaginal opening and aid in the baby delivering faster. That's really not been found to be true. It can speed it up, but the problem is they've always sold this as being like something that will help you to not tear worse. But really what it's done is it's started the tearing process already, and it allows that tissue to tear easier, especially if you don't have good healthy tissues. It also can cause more nerve damage because there's some thought that when you tear naturally as the baby's head is coming out, your body has self-protective mechanisms that keep it from tearing in ways that cause you long-term damage. What I mean by that is it tends to not tear a straight cut. It'll tend to be a little bit jagged, but it goes around nerves, it goes around blood vessels, it does things like that to try to keep itself intact. Whereas an episiotomy is just a pair of scissors that cuts straight through no matter what's there. And so if there's nerves there, blood vessels there, whatever, you're going to automatically get that damage and there's nothing your body can do to prevent it. Episiotomies have also been sold as being a way to make the repairs easier, making it all go back together better. Sometimes dads have been convinced that this is a better way to make mom's vagina be back to normal, for whatever that's worth. Try not to roll your eyes too hard. I can hear you. But I'll just say that while it is an easier repair because it is a straight cut, it doesn't guarantee anything about size or quality of how the repair is going to be down the road. I'll just leave it at that. I've always hated that particular excuse anyway, but I digress. I will say this though. There are some cases where an episiotomy may be life-saving, in which case it is worth it, because obviously a tear in your perineum or a cut in your perineum is very small to deal with compared with losing your baby. But that is a very, very, very small percentage of the time. Unfortunately, most episiotomies that are done routinely by doctors who that's just what they do. Most midwives that I know who've maybe attended thousands of births, maybe have only ever cut one, maybe two episiotomies in their entire career. Some have never cut one at all. So it's just not something that's usually needed. And so I don't want you to get suckered into thinking that, oh, it's just a little cut, it'll help. It actually does more damage and can hurt worse. All right, next thing is upright delivery. So in a hospital setting, you're almost always put on your back with your legs up in the air, which causes your baby to first have to deliver against gravity because it kind of has to go uphill through the pelvic outlet that's now the smallest as it will ever be, because when you lay flat on your back, it closes down your pelvis and makes it smaller. So it manages to get through this small pelvis. It manages to fight gravity and go uphill. But then once the head is out, your provider actually has to push down on your baby to get that front shoulder, the anterior shoulder, underneath the pubic bone, which puts a lot of force and pressure on your perineum, that skin between your vagina and your anus. So you can imagine that kind of a pressure being pressed down even more than what a normal crowning would be will contribute to tears. And I will say that I've seen that a lot. Most of the tears that I've ever seen have been in the hospital. Very, 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 very few have ever been out of a hospital. Not none, but few. When you are upright, nature and gravity can put a gentle, constant force on your perineum in a way that it is more gradual. It allows the tissues to stretch better. When you deliver on your back, it is not that way. Upright isn't done. Upright, the pressure doesn't have to be done on your perineum. I hope that makes sense. It doesn't sound right, but when you're standing upright, that pressure downward to get that front shoulder out from under the pubic bone, it's not necessary because gravity does its job and you're not having to fight gravity and then move things around to try to get the baby out of an unnatural position. So many of these issues that we see that arise from giving birth on your back go away when you're giving birth upright. And now we know in a hospital, they frown upon this because it's very inconvenient for them. So that tells you again there, when you're trying to give birth God's way, the hospital isn't always the best place. I'd say it rarely is the best place because they want you to give birth in a way that is completely contrary to laws of nature and just the way that labor works. But I digress. Let's talk about perineal massage. Do you need to do perineal massage? Well, first of all, what is perineal massage? Perineal massage is when over the course of the weeks leading up to birth, you do some special stretching, massaging movements around your perineum. It's basically designed, or the idea behind it is to increase the pliability of that tissue. Theoretically speaking, I can see why it would work. I did it with my babies. I don't know if it helped or not. One of the things that it does do is it helps you to deal with that sensation of the stretching. But is it actually needed? Maybe not. I've always said yes in the past, but lately I've seen some things that got me thinking that maybe we're just trying to meddle too much in a process that God made perfect and we don't really need to do it. So, why do we think this is needed when God made that tissue to stretch? He made that tissue to stretch an immense amount. Could perineal massage help this? Maybe, probably. But is it needed? I don't know. Like I said, I did it with mine. I had a small tear with AJ. I didn't tear at all with Ruby and Abby. Is that because I had babies before? Is it because I did perineal massage? I don't know. There's no way that anybody can really know. I'll just say that if you want to do it, that's fine. It's something we talk a lot about in the course. If it's not something that you want to do, no biggie. You're probably going to be fine either way. Next thing is and this is really just for hospital birth for the most part, because I don't see this happening in home births, providers need to keep their hands out of your vagina, away from your perineum during pushing and during birth. There is a long time practice, and I used to do it too, of massaging and ironing out the perineum as the baby comes down. The thought is that the more you do that, the more it's going to stretch. However, in my experience, in retrospect, I believe that it actually caused swelling and edema in those tissues that made those tissues more likely to tear, because edematous tissue, swollen tissue, is more likely to tear. It's just not as healthy. It's got lots of fluid in there, and so it's easier for it to pop and stretch. So I believe strongly that midwives, obstetricians need to keep their hands out and just let the baby's head do the work, rather than thinking that God's perfect design needs our help to stretch it out. To any mom who might be listening to this, who had me as her midwife or had me as her nurse and knows that I participated in this with them, I am sorry, because I have learned better, and I hope you didn't tear. I can't remember, but I'll just say that in life, we learn lessons, and when you know better, you do better. And as a midwife now, I practice or would practice if I was catching babies much different than I did back then. So all that being said, don't let your nurse, don't let your midwife, don't let your obstetrician be putting their fingers in there trying to stretch your tissue out for you. The baby's head will do that just fine. Next thing you can do to reduce the risk is water birth, because water has hydrostatic pressure, and that hydrostatic counter pressure against your perineum can help that slow head delivery that we talked about earlier. So it just makes sense that having the water press against your perineum is going to help those tissues have a more controlled stretch, which will then reduce your risk of tearing. Okay, so those are some things that you can do to hopefully reduce your risk of tearing. Now let's talk about what you do if you do tear. Okay, if you do tear, what are you going to do then? Thing one is they may repair it, they may not. Don't be alarmed if they don't. Don't think that they're not doing their job if they don't. They're really probably protecting you. So that's the first thing, is if it's not repaired, that means it was minor and it's not a big deal. Thing two, sitz baths help a lot for healing, because a sitz bath, if you've never seen one before, it's basically like a little bowl that you sit onto your toilet that has, I guess, a slit around the top. And then there's a big bag that looks kind of like an IV bag that you hang up with some warm water in it, and it drains by gravity, and it creates a swirling effect inside of that bowl. And when you sit down, your bottom kind of sinks down into it, and so that swirling hits your bottom, and it just feels really good. It helps with circulation. It helps with healing. So sitz baths are great. What's even better is a sitz bath with postpartum herbal tea in it. And I will put a link down in the show notes to a tea that I loved using. I believe it's from Earth Mama. I'll put the link down there because I want you to check that out. Basically, you make tea with these postpartum tea herbal tea bags. And it's just like you would make tea that you would drink. You just soak them in the hot water, let it create the tea. And then you take that tea once it's cooled and you put it into the bag, and then you let that come down by gravity and swirl against your perineum, which helps with the healing because you're getting the herbal benefits plus the warm water. And it's just amazing. With that same type of tea, you can also make ice packs ahead of time. So you can buy whatever kind of pads you're planning on using. And then what you do is you take that tea, you slowly pour it into the pads until they're saturated. Then you take those pads, lay them in a freezer flat. Usually I'll put them on a cookie sheet or something like that flat. Give them time to freeze like that. And then once they're completely frozen, you can take them all and put them into a bag and then pull those out and use them whenever you need them after the baby's here. They feel so, so good. And again, it gets you the cooling effect on your perineum, which helps with swelling, and it gives you the herbal healing from the herbs that are in the tea. Again, I will put a link to that particular product that I like to use down in the show notes. Another thing that helps a lot if you tear, or really even if you don't tear, because even if you don't tear, oftentimes you'll have little, we call them skid marks. Basically like the very top layer of your skin just has little teeny tiny tears. You might not even be able to see them because of the nature of the tissue down there, but it can burn pretty bad when you pee because urine is acidic. And so when it hits those open areas of skin, it just burns. Okay. Let's just be honest, it burns. But when you use a Peri bottle, which if you go to a hospital to have your baby, you're going to get one given to you. If you don't, if you're having a baby at home, I'm going to put a link if I can find one down in the show notes for you to get you one. But basically, it's a squishy plastic bottle that has little holes in the top. So when you squeeze it, it squirts water out. And if you will fill that Peri bottle up with warm water and start squirting it at your perineum before you start to let your urine stream go. Now, I know that seems a little logistically weird. Make it happen. If you get pee on your hand, so be it. You can wash it after. I'm telling you that by getting that water on your perineum before the urine flow starts, you will dilute the urine and you will make it not burn as bad. Just a little trick for you to try if you do tear, or like I said, even if you don't. Another thing you need to do is to blot when you wipe, especially if you've had a repair. You don't want to drag over that site. You just want to blot it and gently pat it until it's healed enough to where it doesn't hurt anymore. And then lastly, don't stress too much. It's going to heal. You're not going to feel like this forever. It's going to get better. Focus on good nutrition still, because if you have a tear, obviously now your body's trying to heal it. You need lots of good protein. You need lots of hydration, and just don't stress. It will get better and everything will be fine with time. Okay? Hope that's helped you. I know that was a ton of information. I hope you wrote some of it down. Maybe you have to go back and listen to it again if you didn't write it down. Whatever you feel like you need to do, but I just wanted to help remove some of the fear from the tearing and help you to deal with it if it happens. If you have questions, feel free to hop over in our Facebook group and ask them there. If you have had tears and have more to contribute to the conversation, again, hop in our Facebook group and share it with us. I'm just so thankful that you're here, and I hope that this has helped you. So have a great day, and I will see you right back here next week. Real quick, if today's episode blessed you in any way, would you head over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a quick 5-star written review? It'll take you less than a minute, but it's the best thank you you can give me. And it will help my show to reach more mamas just like you, so we can all find God's best for our families. I'll see you right back here in a few days.